The setting sun cast long shadows through the cracked solar panels that lined the walkways of Sector 23, their efficiency long since compromised by the perpetual haze that hung over the worker districts. Kai Rains walked his usual route home from the maintenance facility where he worked, his worn boots silent against the composite pavement. At 24, he had managed to secure a position maintaining the automated waste processing systems that served NovaGenix's corporate sectors, a job that paid better than most available to the unenhanced. Though that wasn't saying much. He lived in the same stackhouse complex where he'd grown up. Though he'd managed to get a unit on the 16th floor, high enough to occasionally glimpse the gleaming spires of the corporate district through the perpetual smog. Sloan had raised him well, teaching him to blend in, to keep his head down, to never draw attention to the abilities that sometimes manifested without warning. He'd learned to disguise his enhanced intelligence as simple diligence, his physical capabilities as good genetics, his occasional flashes of insight as lucky guesses. The maintenance job suited him perfectly, complex enough to engage his enhanced mind while appearing mundane enough to avoid scrutiny. The automated systems frequently malfunctioned in ways their designers never anticipated, but Kai could see the patterns, could feel the flow of data through the neural networks that controlled them. He'd learned to fix things just well enough, never too quickly or too perfectly. Mediocrity was his camouflage. As he turned down the narrow alley that served as a shortcut between blocks C and D, his enhanced hearing picked up the sound of a struggle. A muffled cry, the scuff of boots, the quiet threat of a blade being drawn. Most people in the worker districts knew better than to intervene in such matters. The core sec police rarely ventured this deep into the sectors, unless NovaGenix's interests were directly threatened. But Kai had never been able to completely suppress the part of himself that yearned to help others. He slowed his pace, using his enhanced senses to assess the situation. 3 attackers, 1 victim. The victim's elevated heart rate suggested fear, but not panic. The attackers' movements were practiced, efficient, professional thieves, not desperate addicts. He couldn't walk away, but he had to be smart about this. Sloane's voice echoed in his memory. Your father died to keep your abilities secret. Don't waste his sacrifice. Kai pulled his hood up and deliberately scuffed his boots against the ground as he approached, giving them warning. He rounded the corner to find exactly what he'd expected. 2 men holding a woman against the wall while a third went through her bag. The woman wore the gray uniform of a data entry worker, probably heading home from the late shift. Evening, Kai said quietly, letting a slight tremor enter his voice. Just passing through. The third man turned, revealing a facial tattoo that marked him as a member of the razor wire gang. Keep walking, maintenance rat. This isn't your business. Kai took a deliberate step forward, his enhanced mind calculating trajectories, angles, forces. He didn't need superhuman strength or speed for what he was about to do. Just precision, just timing, just the right amount of apparent clumsiness. Actually, he stammered, I think I know her. Sarah, right? From Block D? The woman's eyes widened slightly, understanding flickering across her face. Yes. Kai. His next step appeared to catch on a piece of debris. He stumbled forward, arms windmilling dramatically. His shoulder caught the tattooed man at exactly the right angle, sending him staggering into his companions. The woman's bag went flying, spilling its contents. In the confusion, Kai's hand shot out, appearing to grab for balance, but actually striking a precise nerve cluster in one attacker's wrist. The man's grip on the woman loosened involuntarily. She didn't waste the opportunity. She bolted, running toward the better-lit main thoroughfare. The tattooed man cursed, starting after her, but Kai was still tangled in their midst, apologizing profusely, seemingly trying to help them up while actually throwing off their balance with each careful movement. By the time they shoved him aside, the woman was long gone. The tattooed man grabbed Kai's collar. "You stupid klutz. Do you know what you just cost us?" "I'm sorry." Kai raised his hands, projecting fear while subtly shifting his weight. "I just didn't want anyone to get hurt." The man drew back his fist, but a voice from the shadows interrupted. "Core Sec Patrol coming up on Block D. 30 seconds." The gang members immediately released Kai, melting away into the darkness. He caught a glimpse of the figure who had warned them. A woman in a maintenance worker's coveralls, her face hidden by the shadows. Something about the way she stood suggested she had witnessed the entire encounter. Kai didn't wait around. He hurried home, taking a circuitous route to ensure he wasn't followed. But as he climbed the stairs to his apartment, the elevators in worker housing were perpetually broken. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. That brief encounter had awakened something in him, a desire to do more than simply survive. He was still thinking about it 3 days later when someone knocked on his door during dinner. Through the door's thin material, he could sense a familiar presence, the same woman from the alley, though he couldn't have explained how he knew this. When he opened the door, she smiled. She was older than him, maybe in her late 30s, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to see right through him. "Hello, I'm Phoenix. We need to talk about what happened in that alley." He tensed, but she held up a hand. "May I come in? I've spent 3 days verifying who you are, what you are, and I think we can help each other." Against his better judgment, but following an instinct he had learned to trust, he let her in. She glanced around his small apartment, the carefully maintained recycling unit, the second-hand furniture, the books he'd collected over the years. "Nice place," she said, but her tone suggested she saw more than the obvious. "You've done well for yourself. Maintenance tech, right? Good cover. Technical enough to be useful, mundane enough to avoid attention." "Who are you?" Kai asked, though he was beginning to suspect. "I'm part of an organization called the Symmetry Collective," she said, settling onto his worn couch. "What I saw in that alley, it wasn't just heroism. It was control, precision, the kind that doesn't come naturally to the unenhanced. The Symmetry Collective." Kai had heard whispers about them, an underground network of enhanced and unenhanced working together to resist NovaGenix's control. Most dismissed them as an urban legend. "I don't know what you think you saw," he started, but Phoenix cut him off with a laugh. "What I saw was someone with enhanced abilities carefully disguising them as clumsiness. I saw precision masked as accident. I saw strength held carefully in check. And most importantly, I saw someone who chose to help rather than walk away." She leaned forward. The collective was founded by Dr. Elena Santos, one of the original scientists who worked with Dr. Kessler on Evolix. She left when she realized what NovaGenix really intended. Since then, we've built a network of people who believe that enhancement shouldn't be a privilege of wealth, that it shouldn't be controlled by corporations, that it should be a choice available to all. "And what makes you think I'd want anything to do with that?" Phoenix's smile widened. "Because I've been watching you for 3 days. The way you work, fixing complex systems just well enough to not draw attention. The way you move, always holding back, always careful. And most importantly, the way you chose to help that woman when most would have walked away. You're different, and you're tired of hiding it." She pulled out a small holographic projector, displaying a map of the city's underground infrastructure. "We have cells throughout the sectors, working to undermine NovaGenix's control. Some redistribute medicine to those who can't afford it. Others help enhanced people escape corporate contracts. Some work to decrypt NovaGenix's research, trying to understand the true potential of Evolix. And what do you want from me? To start, we need someone who understands automated systems. Someone who can help us access NovaGenix's waste processing network. They dispose of a lot of interesting things: failed experiments, discontinued research, prototypes, things that could help us understand what they're really doing. She stood, heading for the door. Think about it. If you're interested, come to Maintenance Hub 23B tomorrow night at 2200 hours. Ask for Artemis. She runs our tech division, former NovaGenix systems architect who got tired of watching them bury their mistakes. At the door, she paused. You're not alone, Kai. There are others like you. People with gifts they have to hide. People who want to change things. Maybe it's time to stop hiding and start fighting back. After she left, Kai stood at his window, looking out at the NovaGenix tower that dominated the skyline. He thought about his father's sacrifice, about his mother's dreams for him, about Sloane's careful protection. He thought about the woman in the alley, about how it had felt to finally use his abilities to help someone, even in such a small way. Kai walked into Maintenance Hub 23B at exactly 2200 hours. A tall woman with silver-streaked hair and cybernetic augmentations visible along her temples looked up from a holographic display. "You must be Kai," she said. "I'm Artemis. Phoenix said you might come." She gestured to a large open space beside her workstation. "Before we discuss anything further, I need to understand what you're truly capable of." Kai tensed. "I thought this was about systems work." "It is," Artemis said, her augmentations pulsing softly. "But what we're planning requires more than just technical expertise." She touched one of her temple implants. "These help manage my own enhancement, single-dose cognitive enhancement, specifically focused on learning and memory. I can absorb and retain information at an extraordinary rate. It's how I learned their systems so quickly after I left. But it also means I remember everything I saw there, every experiment, every acceptable casualty in their march toward control." She pulled up a holographic training simulation. First test, cognitive processing. The air filled with complex mathematical equations, chemical formulas, and network protocols, all shifting and changing at increasing speeds. "Tell me what you see." Kai let his enhanced mind process the information flow. The third equation describes quantum entanglement. The chemical formula is for a synthetic neurotransmitter. The network protocols ... He continued, breaking down each element with perfect recall, seeing connections that would be invisible to most. "Good," Artemis said, shutting down the display. "Now for something more physical." She pressed a panel and a section of the floor slid away, revealing a reinforced testing chamber below. "After you." The chamber was stark and industrial, with high ceilings and padded walls. Artemis's voice came through hidden speakers. "Show me your speed first. The sensors will track you." Kai took a deep breath, then unleashed a fraction of his true speed. He moved in bursts around the chamber, each step precisely calculated to appear impressive, but not unprecedented. But Artemis wasn't fooled. "Stop holding back," she said sharply. "I need to see what you can really do." Something in her tone made him trust her. This time, he let go. The world slowed to a crawl around him as he moved at speeds that made the air crackle. When he stopped, Artemis's augmentations were pulsing rapidly. "Now strength," she said, and various weighted objects appeared from panels in the walls. "And please, no more restraint." By the time they finished the physical tests, Kai had demonstrated abilities far beyond what he'd ever shown anyone except Sloane. Artemis joined him in the chamber, her expression intense. "You're exactly what we need," she said, pulling up a new hologram, a molecular diagram that made Kai's blood run cold. "Do you recognize this?" He did. Even without his enhanced perception, he would have recognized the distinctive molecular structure of Evolix. But this was different, modified, twisted into something new. "What is this?" "NovaGenix's latest atrocity," Artemis said grimly. "A new version of Evolix with built-in control mechanisms. Nanobots that respond to remote signals, allowing them to directly control anyone who receives this version. They're not just selling enhancement anymore, they're selling slavery with a glossy marketing campaign." The implications hit Kai like a physical blow. They could force enhanced individuals to do anything. "Exactly," Artemis said, her augmentations pulsing with a darker light. "Imagine entire populations controlled by whoever holds the signal key. They're manufacturing it in a hidden research complex beneath Sector 18. We've discovered that the complex also houses all their research data." She paused, letting the information sink in. "We need to destroy it, all of it. The samples, the data, everything." "That's deep in NovaGenix territory," Kai said. "Heavy security, automated defense systems. Which is why we need someone with your particular combination of abilities. Your enhanced cognition can interface with their systems in ways they won't expect. Your speed and strength give us options that wouldn't normally exist." She pulled up a detailed schematic of the complex. "I've memorized every security protocol, every patrol pattern, every possible response they might have. Combined with your abilities, we could do this." Kai studied the schematics, his enhanced mind already calculating possibilities. "If we fail, then we die," Artemis said bluntly. "But if we don't try, everyone who receives the new Evolix becomes their puppet, including children born to enhanced parents. They're already running trials on genetic transmission of the control mechanisms." She held his gaze. "I'm not asking you to decide right now, but you've seen what you can do when you're not holding back. Imagine what we could accomplish if we stopped hiding and started fighting." Kai looked at the molecular diagram still floating between them, the blueprint for a future where enhancement became enslavement. He thought of his father's sacrifice, of all the people in the worker districts just trying to survive, of children yet unborn who would never know true freedom. "When do we start?" he asked. Artemis smiled, not the careful smile of earlier, but something fierce and genuine. "We already have. Those tests weren't just about assessing your abilities, they were about calibrating our plan. Based on what you've shown me, I've already identified our optimal approach." She expanded the facility schematics. "Now let me show you how we're going to rewrite the future." As she began outlining the operation, Kai felt something shift inside him. The careful restraint he'd maintained all his life wasn't gone, but it had transformed into something else, something focused and purposeful. He wasn't just hiding anymore. He was preparing. Above them, through layers of infrastructure and smog, the NovaGenix tower rose into the night sky, its windows gleaming like watchful eyes. But for the first time, Kai looked at it without fear. Change was coming, and this time, evolution wouldn't be controlled by the highest bidder. It would be guided by the hearts of those who dared to dream of something better.